Welcome to the worst nightmare of all. Reality.
Explore the lesser-known stories of our unknown world. Join the pursuit of the paranormal with Ash and Greg.
Hello, Ash.
Hello, Greg. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. How are you doing today?
Yeah, not bad. Not too bad. Not too bad.
What's life been like for Ash over the last week? How's the first of all? How's the mini-con coming along? So that's a couple of weeks away now.
We are pretty much sold out.
Amazing.
We sold another load of tickets over the weekend, and yeah, I think I'm capping it at where we're at. So
That's amazing.
Yeah, sold out. Which I can't even believe I'm saying that we sold out.
That's awesome news. Yeah, that is awesome news. Considering you guys only started putting it together a short time ago as well.
Yeah, demand's definitely there for this type of stuff in the UK. So.
Yeah, definitely. What else you been up to? Anything exciting?
Nope, nothing else has happened in this apartment this week.
No strange.
Cyril's not been to visit us. I don't think.
Well, we've had an interesting week on social media with our last post. So if anybody's not seen it, check it out on Facebook and Instagram. We put up the episode notes for the Solway Firth spaceman misidentification photo. Bit of a mouthful. And even though we've said that it was misidentified and it was the mum in the background, we still had people calling us out saying it was a fake picture and it's been resolved. So first of all, it wasn't actually a fake picture. It really wasn't. It was a genuine photo. It's not photoshopped or anything. It's just the fact that the guy, when he's looking through his viewfinder on an old camera, he doesn't see the full frame like you do when you take the picture. So he didn't see the wife in the background. Hence why he said he didn't see anybody else in the photo at the time, because he didn't. Some people coming out and saying it was some guys in hazmat suits for a local nuclear test.
I think he remembered some guys walking about a field with chemical suits on. It's something you'd remember, I think.
Yeah. Even if you didn't take the photo, or you didn't see him when you took the photo, you'd see him afterwards, surely.
Enjoying a picnic in the field, and then some guys walk past in hazmat suits. You'd notice them.
And it looked like a nice summer's day because the girl's got a dress on, so hazmat suits would be quite noticeable, I'd like to think. So yeah, even misidentified in like photographs, when confirmed as being identified as what they really are, still get called out of people saying it's aliens. And so so I'm at a loss. There, but it's created quite a lot of conversation online across the various groups that it was posted on. So we've got to be thankful for that. Also, last week we mentioned that we'd been reaching out to other podcasts, and we've got another couple of podcast trailers to play for you. One of them is from the Hillbilly Horror Stories, and the second one is Spread the Dread podcast as well. And the last one is What Goes Bump in the Night podcast. And we were actually fortunate enough that this episode, we're speaking to the guys from the Hillbilly Horror Stories podcast.
I really like this podcast. I'm looking forward to talking to them. Yeah,
it was. It's going to be great. They're such nice people, and I cannot encourage you enough to listen to the podcast that they do. They do all manner of subjects. They've got horror stuff. They've got paranormal. They've got UFO related, true crime stuff. So they touch all bases, and they're particularly big over in the US. And this intro is being recorded after we've done the interview, And what you guys can't see when we're talking to them is in the background, they've got all these Exorcist posters. I noticed a skeleton hanging from a ceiling. So they've got
an Ozzy Osbourne Ouija board.
Yes, and they touch on that. So it was a really good interview. They're really nice people. And I hope that you guys can check them out.
They do about 20 episodes a week on their podcast.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
they do. They're workaholics and machines in terms of pushing out the podcast, but it's really good stuff. I've been actually listening to him for a long time anyway, prior to this conversation, and I know you've been listening to him as well, Ash.
Yeah.
And they're really nice guys. So yeah, check them out. And here's the interview.
Hey guys, I'm Jerry.
And I'm Tracy.
We are the host of Hillbilly Horror Stories. What we do every week is we tell you mostly paranormal stories, and then we throw in a couple of unsolved mysteries, maybe a little bit of true crime if it's creepy enough. And the beauty of this is that Tracy doesn't know the show, correct?
This is correct. Never do.
So then what happens when you don't know the show?
I'm just as surprised as anybody else is.
And that's the beauty of what our show is. We basically get the same reactions out of Tracy as what the listener at home is getting. And I think that's been a success to our show so far.
Yeah, I think it works.
We also use our show to promote mental health awareness and suicide awareness every show. So we get the added bonus of trying to help people out while you get to listen to paranormal shows.
Amen. And that's what's important to us.
So please subscribe to Hillbilly Horror Stories wherever you listen to your other podcasts.
What's up, everyone? I'm John.
And I'm Joe.
And we are the hosts of Spread the Dread Podcast, your weekly source for serial killer stories,
true crime tales,
and horror movie hobnobbing.
If you like the dark side of life with a lot of swearing
and humor guaranteed to get you banned from social media and family gatherings,
visit spreadthedreadpodcast.com and come vibe with your tribe.
We release brand new episodes every Wednesday.
And you can find them on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube and BitChute.
But be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram too.
Wow, John, you just went like 45 seconds without swearing.
Ah, motherfucker!
Hello and welcome to What Goes Bump in the Night. I'm your host, Trevor Jensen, and with me is
Riley Clark.
And on this podcast, we explore everything spooky, extraterrestrial, unexplained, and supernatural.
Bringing you our own personal experiences from our guests, creepy stories.
So join us around the campfire, or for just a Riley and Trev talk where we talk about any topic that we feel is relevant to anything that day. And you could also just come for these creepypastas that we find on these forums.
So join us around the campfire and find out who really goes
bump in the night.
Today we are joined by Jerry and Tracy from Hillbilly Horror Stories podcast. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And you guys are a podcast that's over in America, in Kentucky. How are things in Kentucky at the moment?
Smooth.
Now,
tomorrow or the next day, it might be 100 degrees. You never know. Wow. Kentucky's crazy.
Yeah, we're in what they call the Ohio Valley, and the weather has been known to change here by 40 degrees in one day.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's crazy. I mean, we get fluctuations in weather, and we don't know whether it's going to snow or rain or be sunny at any time of the year. But 40 degrees is quite a swing. Does that happen quite a lot?
I would say at least once or twice a year it happens. So, and it could be the winter time to where it goes, from almost like a spring day to freezing, or it can be sometimes in July here where it's typically in the 90s. Sometimes it'll get into the 50s and 60s for like 1 or 2 days, just random.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, thank you for joining us today. I've been a long time listener, and you cover lots of different subjects. So you're on episode about 270 of the main podcast, I think, and you do a few other types of topics and dead time stories, and UFO only is a new one that I think you've just started doing. I've been listening to those as well. So could you just tell us a little bit more about the podcast and how you guys got started?
Well, the podcast in general, excuse me, is anything that's pretty much unexplained. So we spend the majority of time on ghost and poltergeist and hauntings and that type of stuff. But occasionally, we will jump into something like what's the place over in Russia where they had the all the hikers and stuff.
Dolstov Pass, I think it was.
Yes, that Dolstov Pass. Yeah, that's something. We'll do something like that. That's just kind of that stranger. We'll do what is it? The combustion. The people would just burst into flames.
That's stuff.
We'll do some unknown topics like that don't really have an answer, but past lives, that's another one we'd like to do. Kids that apparently have been reincarnated, so we'll do some stuff like that. But if it's creepy, we'll do some true crime. We've had some the cases where there was some cults involved, satanic cults and stuff. We'll do some cases like that, but for the most part, it's hauntings and that type of thing. And we've been doing this for 5 years now. Just had our 5-year anniversary back in August, and we're having a blast doing it. But as far as how we got started, it started off with me and a friend of mine by the name of Ricky Graninger, and we did 8 episodes, and it was completely different than what we do today. It was more 2 guys doing adult humor and just having fun and goofing on some hauntings. And we told the stories, but we made a bunch of crude jokes in between. And as Diane, student from History Goes Bump, put it, it was like 2 guys at a bar having a conversation about ghosts. And Ricky ended up not being able to make it one night. I had Tracy set in. She didn't know the story, and it was a last minute thing. I did that one on Rock and Roll and the Occult. I said, just chime in when you want to, and she did. People liked it. Ricky came back for 2 more episodes, and he said, look, she's way better at this. You guys have a chemistry, and it'd probably be better if you just went on without me and just had her as your host. And since episode 12, she's been the full-time host, and it's a completely different show. It's more family friendly, and it's just I think it's a lot more enjoyable because we found a chemistry, and we found a pattern, more of a routine of her not knowing anything to do with the subject of that week's episode. So she just responds accordingly. And I think people like that because she asks a lot of the same questions that they ask.
Now, that's one thing that sets you apart from other podcasts, and it's something that we've tried on this podcast as well and do regularly, is where one of us will be the subject matter expert and the other one doesn't really know anything about it. And we just, like yourselves, just chime in and just ask the questions that hopefully people who are listening want to ask as well. So I like that about your episodes. So in terms of the paranormal, and have you had any personal paranormal experiences?
Tracy, I've been talking. I'll let you go first.
Well, honestly, I might have, but I didn't know it because, I wasn't into the paranormal thing. But when I go back and look at some things from the past, I'm like, oh, shoot, maybe that was paranormal. I just didn't know it. The only thing that stands out for me is I used to spend the night at my grandparents' house all summer, and we had a good friend that lived across the road. And we were at her house, and her mom had one of those wash basins that you wash dishes in. And it all of a sudden blew up, right in her face. And I don't know what I thought it was at the time, but now that I think about it, I was like, oh, hell, that was weird. You just don't have, something like that happen. But
I've had, some things like at the haunted houses and things like that. And
that I've seen, but other than that, I really haven't had that many.
How about you, Jerry?
I've had enough where I wrote a book that had basically a third of it nothing but paranormal stories. So what I'll do is I'll start with the very first thing that came into, and that one actually is pretty interesting. So we're going to go back. I was 13 years old. My parents bought a house out in the suburbs. We had lived in the city for our entire lives, and we got a house out in the suburb. About the time, a year after we had moved in, my great grandfather, which was my mother's paternal grandfather, passed away. And he was more or less a father to her. He raised her. Her mother wasn't in the picture a lot when she was young. So this was devastating to her. And so much so that it kicked her into a state of depression. Like so many other cases, when you have a tragic event, you have a tendency to lean on religion. My mother was raised Baptist. She converted to Catholic literally about the time, about a year and a half or two before this happened. And she wasn't the most religious person. I mean, she went to church, when it was holidays and stuff. Now, we were in a Catholic school, so we got to go to mass, every single week. And I say got to kind of sarcastically, but so we went more than she did is the point. And so this happens, and she all of a sudden became super, super religious as far as leaning on stuff. And she's talking one night, we're sitting in the living room, and she's calling the 700 Club. I don't know if you guys have that over in Great Britain, but it basically is, it was a minister that had about an hour, 2 hour long religious show. And it was on almost every night, I believe. I can't remember, it was on one of the major networks, but it was on almost every night. So people would watch, and they had a prayer line you could call, and you could donate money. It was one of those ministries that you could donate money to. And so I remember one night I was sitting in the living room. We had one of those old time console TVs that take up half of a wall. And it had this television show playing. She was actually on the phone with the prayer line, and we were across the room from the television. I was sitting in a chair next to my mother. I was drawing. She was on the phone. Now, you got to know, on top of this television, this goes back and dates me a little bit, but on top of this television, there was a little chair. And when I say little, it was about the size of what a small doll would sit in, okay? But this was not a true chair. It was a pincushion and a place to put your sewing materials. So where the cushion was, it would lift up, and you put your thimbles and your rolls of thread and stuff in there. And then the rest of it was just red and lacy, and you just stuck all your pins and stuff in it. So that was sitting on top of the television. We'd had it for years. We had just got through doing some work to the house. So there was some house numbers, 3 house numbers that were made out of metal that we had taken off, and they were laying on top of this. So that weighed it down a pretty good amount. And then there was also a bottle of Elmer's glue sitting on top. So this thing actually had some weight to it. As she's on the phone with this prayer line, this chair pops up into the air, goes about 3 to 4 feet away from the television, and lands on the floor and scatters everything that's in it. So when I say it's 3, 4, 5 feet away, this did not fall off of the television. It popped up in the air and landed several feet away. We just look at each other as if to say, did you just see what I saw? And we didn't have to say anything. We knew by the looks that we both just saw that. So she pretty much tells whoever she's on the phone with, the prayer line, I got to go. And we just didn't know what to say. We really didn't say much at all. So we pick up the stuff on the floor and put it back. And within a couple of hours, I go to bed. It was just us in the house at the time. My sisters were gone somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where, but they weren't home. So I go to bed. It's probably 11 o'clock. Within a couple of minutes, she's in there, waking me up, or, I hadn't really even got to sleep, but she's in my room saying, hey, I'm hearing some noises upstairs in the attic. Can you come into the living room and sit with me for a little bit? Now, you got to know, my mom is somebody who She's always been a little bit sensitive. She had always she had a grandmother who was full-blooded Native American, and they were very spiritual people. They had a lot of beliefs that were different than ours, but it was something she grew up with. So she was used to like the paranormal, supernatural, spiritual, whatever you want to say. So she didn't get shaken very easily. I go in the living room. I sit down with her, probably 10, 15 minutes. I hear absolutely nothing. I don't know what she heard. I heard nothing. So I go back to bed. The next night, here she is again, about the same time. Hey, can you come in here again? Okay. I get up, I go in the living room, and I probably wasn't there a minute, and I heard the same thing she was hearing. Now, our attic was just rafters and insulation. There was no plywood or anything down making floors so you could walk around. It was one of those attics that come to a point so you really didn't have room to stand up except right at the top of the stairs. So you basically could put some boxes and stuff over top of the rafters on the side. So it gave you a little bit of storage space, but not much. It's not like in these movies where they get up in the attic and they walk all around standing completely up. It wasn't that. You walked up to the top of steps, you put something to the left or the right, and that's it. And the noises we were hearing were basically, if you was to take a heavy piece of wooden furniture, like a dresser or a chest, and you was to push it along the wooden floors, there's a sound that it just makes. That's the sound we were getting, but there was nothing up there other than boxes that could have made that sound. Not even boxes that were heavy could have made that sound. So I'm not exactly sure what it was, but that's the kind of sounds that were happening. All those two incidents back-to-back night kicked off 5 years of paranormal activity in that house.
Did you go up and look in the attic, see if there's anything that moved or anything like that?
Actually, I did the next day when it was daylight, went up there and didn't notice anything. But like I said, there wasn't a bunch of stuff up there anyway, so I probably wouldn't have noticed if anything was out of place. But I did notice that that there wasn't anything big enough that could have made that kind of noise.
So after that, did that make you a believer in the paranormal, or were you still thinking, I'm not really too sure what this is all about?
I'm going to be honest with you. I've looked back and tried to remember this. I don't know that I'd ever really given it a second thought. I don't know if I even had an opinion on the paranormal, to be honest with you. So it was kind of strange to have something happen because, I'd watched horror movies and stuff like that. I mean, we're talking 1983. So we're within 5-6 years of Halloween coming out, The Exorcist coming out. I think The Exorcist came out in 74, I believe. Mm-hmm. So, and I had seen The Exorcist, and that's my favorite movie of all time. You could probably tell if you're looking, we've got The Exorcist stuff all over the place.
I could see that.
But, that scared me because of the fact of possession. But I don't think I really thought about like ghosts and stuff back then. I obviously was aware of possession and demonic and all that stuff and that scared me. But I don't think I really had an opinion on other types of what you would consider to be paranormal until this stuff happened.
So I've been the same, to be fair. And horror films always scared me, like The Exorcist when I first watched that. So you just said you watched The Exorcist about the age of 13, is that about right?
I think
that was even before that.
I think it was before that because I would say it was probably, I was probably 10, I think, when I saw it.
So that must have been quite frightening at the time.
Yeah, it was because I saw it for the first time in the movie theaters. They had done like a rerun of it or something like that where they would still play it again, and I saw it there, and man, that's a movie that if you've never seen it on the big screen and you get the opportunity just from the sound alone, because I know there's the beginning when the priest is in Iraq and he's walking around and this train of horses come by, and it's just so loud that I can remember that freaking me out. And that's not even the scary part of the movie, it's horses going by. Yeah. But it freaked me out so much watching it on the big screen.
So the the instance at the house, did that spark an interest in you, or you just put it to one side? It's just something that happened.
Oh no, that I have had a lifelong fascination with the paranormal since that started. It wasn't immediate. Obviously, I was scared, freaked out at first. We started getting noises that would come through the ductwork, so you could hear voices of. I could always tell it was one woman and two men, but having conversations. But I could never make out what the conversations were, but I could separate the voices. And that freaked me out so much that I went out and saved my money cutting grass and babysitting to buy a stereo from Kmart and set that right next to my bed. So when those things happen, I could turn the stereo up. But no, my senior thesis in high school was on devil worshiping. So yeah, no, it kicked off everything, a fascination. Once it was all brought to my attention and I had experiences, I couldn't get enough of.
Cool. What about you, Tracy? Apart from that episode, what sort of sparked your interest in this sort of subject matter?
I've always been scared of movies like that, like always. So once I kind of got it, and with him, and he's a weirdo. Sorry. Whoever gets into that at 10 years old, something wrong there. But he loves it. And I've been fascinated since I've started this. But I will tell you, I do not want to go into the woods. Nope, not having it. There's a lot of things that terrify me now. And this room is one of them. So
yeah,
there's like, but I just think of a whole lot of stuff now that is terrifying. And to think that this stuff is really happening. People experience being possessed, and I don't know. It's too much for me. But yeah.
Has your opinion has your opinion on things changed since you've been doing the podcast?
Yes, definitely. Like I said, it really makes you think about certain things. And like when I did that rock and roll show, that Hotel California, when I listened to that song, anytime before this podcast, I never thought a thing about it. But when I learned about what the song was about, and then I listened to it and hear the words, I'm like, oh my God, that's horrible. Like I'm singing to this awful song where you can check in, but you never leave. You know what I'm saying? So it just makes me think of little things like that. So yeah,
so
I've learned a lot.
We've I'm primarily paranormal, and Ash is UFO, sort of the UFO expert of the two, and we started doing the podcast about a year ago, and we're talking about sort of some lesser known sort of paranormal stuff like cryptids and those kind of things. And since the podcast started, the subject matters that we've discussed a year ago, I wouldn't have even thought that I would even say out loud, let alone think in my head. So so honestly, we've interviewed people that have claimed to be abducted by aliens on a daily basis, regardless of where they're sleeping. We've spoken to people that have seen Bigfoot. We've spoken to people that have recorded sort of orbs and spirits sort of coming on to their hands in their house. They've sent us the videos of that. It's some crazy stuff that we've never would have imagined we'd have been speaking about. Is there a particular subject or topic that you guys have done a podcast on that you think that's just mind-blowing, either too mind-blowing to be believable, or something that you've just thought, oh my God, this is incredible?
Tracy, I'll let you start with that one, and I'm going to take Ninja downstairs so he'll quit barking in our ear.
Oh. We just had a listener tell us a story about UFOs and some things that he said he's got on camera. I haven't seen them all yet. And he is so passionate about how real this is, and like the whole world don't have a clue. But some of the things he says, it really makes you stop and think. You're like, okay, some people might think he's crazy, or it made me think, oh my God, what if he's right? I don't know. I believe in that stuff, but you almost have to see it yourself to believe it. I just think there's a whole lot of people that have experienced the same thing. All of them can be wrong. You know what I'm saying? So, I guess I'm more of a believer than I thought I would be. There's just too much similarity to a bunch of stories that people have spoken about, and it's mind blowing to me. I'm just some country girl, I don't know. I hear all this stuff and I'm like, but us country folks, there's a lot of crazy out there too, so you have to take it for what it is sometimes.
What about you, Terry?
Well, the same thing. The gentleman she was just talking about, his name's Reagan from Missouri. And it was actually an episode that we ran about 2 weeks ago. So if anybody gets a chance to listen to it, he is convinced, as she said, that the way he puts it, they're lights. And creatures come out of these lights. So they're not solid objects like we think of UFOs. They are more or less portals. Mm-hmm. And these creatures are reptilian. They come out of it. He says, he admits that, hey, I know this sounds crazy. I wouldn't have believed this a year ago, but now it's happening all the time. And he's got a bunch of videos that show these flashing lights in the sky that do look to be stationary. Mm-hmm. And he says that that everything that you see on TV about UFOs is completely wrong, that these creatures are what's dividing people, whether it's just a husband and wife in their house because you just don't see them, or whether it's what's going on in the world today. But he is adamant that what he's saying is 100% the truth. And he does truly believe that. So that is kind of a cool thing to listen to. We hadn't had anybody like that on our show in 5 years. So this was a real special event for us. Now, as far as really believing something or how it's changed, I can say that doing all the stories, I think we've done 3 different episodes of past live stories. And that's probably my biggest change. I don't think I ever believed in reincarnation. And now I 100% believe in reincarnation, and it's all due to the research that we've done on those episodes for this show. That and my thoughts on suicide. I grew up primarily Catholic, and the Catholic Church has changed their stance on suicide based on what it used to be. It used to be if you committed suicide, you went to hell, no ifs, ands, or buts. That's the way I was brought up. Now they take into consideration that mental illness and what have you, so they don't take the you go straight to hell stance. But we've talked to enough people on the show that their stances, when you pass away, your spirit doesn't go to heaven, it doesn't go to hell. It basically goes back to a classroom setting where you review all the stuff that you did good and all the stuff you did bad. And eventually you go back. And when you go back, then you get to redo it all again with hopefully better judgment or whatever the situation is. Then it doesn't matter if you're a serial killer. It doesn't matter if you committed suicide. It doesn't matter if you're a priest or a rabbi. Everybody goes through the same process. And it's just a matter of how much schooling you have to go to before you get to come back. And so that's, I kind of kind of believe in that theory. I kind of like that theory, and I like thinking that just because somebody makes a mistake in life, whether it be suicide or whether it be something else, that they're not condemned to a damnation of hell, fire, and brimstone. And so I think that's kind of the two things that have changed my complete mindset since starting the show.
That's interesting because we've had a couple of people on this show where we've talked to mediums and those that talk about past lives and reincarnation. And Greg is apparently on his 32nd life. And again, it's the same sort of information from different sources where, like you just said, where you go through and then at the end of that life, you sort of review. There's still stuff you need to learn, still stuff you need to do. You just do it again until you've done whatever needs to be done, and then you can then pass over to the afterlife is. So it's interesting that you said it there again, because like I say, it's just so very similar. It all sort of comes together to just sort of make you think that there is something, and like I say, it feels good to sort of believe in that, because like I say, no one wants to die, but it makes you feel a bit more open that when you do die, that it isn't the end. So that's pretty good. I wanted to just sort of ask you, because I say you're a husband and wife team, and you've been doing the podcast for 5 years, nearly 300 episodes. What's it like working with each other as a husband and wife and sort of putting out the work that you do?
Actually, it's really been nice. Jerry's one of these guys that keeps you on your toes. He always keeps you laughing and entertained, which I absolutely love. And, you know, he does like 95% of this work. I literally just jump in at the end and go for it. But it's nice. It's been really nice. It's a special time for us to do this together. I think we've grown a lot, and I know we feel very blessed to have our platform that we have. And I wouldn't want to change anything myself. So I've been lucky that I got to be a part of it.
Go ahead. I'll let you go first. That's the first thing you learn.
It's been nice.
You're in the clear, Jerry. You're in the clear.
You made it.
Yeah, I'm in the clear as long as we're on these microphones in front of us.
We've got it all on videotape, so whatever goes down, we've got it as evidence.
That's right.
Well, for me, it's been a lot of fun. It's like we were telling somebody actually yesterday at lunch, we had a chance to have lunch with a couple of listeners that have come to some live events that we do, and they were in town and they wanted to do lunch. And we get that occasionally. People are like, hey, I'm coming through your area. Do you want to hook up for lunch or something? And so we were able to do that. And yesterday we were actually telling them, it's like, you know, we don't spend as much time together as you would think. I probably work 55 to 60 hours a week on the show. And most of that, I do all the research myself. It's not that she can't do it. I'm a control freak. And I know I'm the one that's got to read the story. So the research is my first go round of memorizing it. So it comes through with, you know, when I'm telling the story. And if somebody else does that research for me, then it just not going to come out the same. We've had some other people actually do some of the research and send us the story, but in the end, I'm a control freak and I want to do the story. And I actually have a certain way that I research. You know, there's some stories, it doesn't matter what it is, there's 5 different versions of it. And I want to try to be as accurate as I can on the story. So if I see the same thing 5 different times, that's probably the route I'm going to go with, instead of, you know, the 2 different variations that really weren't very common out there. But at the same time, I want to know those variations so I can point them out in the episodes that they're out there. And so, you know, I'll see something and then I'll be like, oh, well, that's interesting. And then I'll start researching something that's similar, but I can't go off on those little branches if somebody else is doing it for me. So I think that's been the sex.
I think it also lends credibility as well, because like you say, if somebody else is doing the research, you don't fully understand the subject matter, which is why Ash does all the UFO stuff. I try and do all the paranormal stuff because that's where our sort of skill sets are. And then we're just like, either of us are the passenger on the episode, and we sort of ask the questions and try and dig a little bit deeper. And if you didn't do the research, when those questions are being fired at you, that's when you can fall over a little bit if you're not the subject matter expert. So
right, and that's the key, to know it backwards and forwards. So if she does ask me a question, because not everything makes it onto the show. I mean, I might have looked at a bunch of stuff I didn't choose to put in there, but she might ask the question and I'll know the answer, even though I wouldn't have brought it up otherwise. But the whole point of what I was getting at is 55, 60 hours a week is what I spend on the show. And with the recording part is most of the only things that we really do together. So we probably spend about 4 to 5 hours a week doing all the recording, and then the rest of it, we don't even see each other. She's downstairs, I'm upstairs working.
So do you do the podcast full time? That's your...
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, for about the last almost 2 years now.
That's incredible. Because me and Ash both work full time, and we know the level we're at. We know how much time we have to put into each episode anyway, and we put one out once a week, and even that is challenging at times. So my hat's off to you, because that's some incredible feat. How many episodes do you put out a week?
Well, real episodes, we've got the one that's a full-length episode. That's our Sunday night staple. We've added other episodes throughout the week, but the UFO only you mentioned earlier, those are typically 8 to 10 minute episodes. So, the Hillbilly Horror Stories started out being the main episode on Sunday night. So for the longest time, that's all that it was. And that episode is typically about 25 hours worth of research, recording, editing. That's the staple. It will always be. Now, these other shows like the UF only, I mean, it's a lot less research. It's not, it's mainly a personal account. So an episode like that, writing, research, you're probably looking at an hour for an 8-minute episode, 8 to 10 minutes. And the Hillbilly Dead Town Stories, that's a more scripted podcast. That's just strictly me. But those take a little longer. We were doing videos for them for a while, and it was taken from video and audio. It was about 8 hours for an 8 to 10 minute episode. Wow. So we've since stopped with the videos because that was about 4 hours of it by itself. And we just do 2 of those a week. And but it's music behind it. It's scripted. It's tried to be told in a spooky way. But, so that takes a little bit of time, but not as much as the Hillbilly Horror Stories. And then a couple of the other episodes we do are basic reprises. Like we do a classic episode. Mm-hmm. So we'll go back to like episode 20 or 30 because a lot of people haven't heard that one yet. So that really is just taking an old episode, cleaning it up a little bit because our audio wasn't as good back then, and putting a beginning on it, an intro on it. So those don't take a lot of time. It's just, so we're getting them out there. But the main one's always going to be Hillbilly Horror Stories on Sunday night, the main episode. That's always going to be a 25 hours of our work week right there.
And then we do the shorts.
Yeah, for Patreon, we do 6 episodes a week. So right now, if you go to Hillbilly Horror Stories, there is an episode that comes out every day except Monday of some sort. Sometimes they're 8 to 10 minutes, whatever. But then on Patreon, we do an episode every Tuesday through Sunday that's 8 to 10 minutes also. And then we do 2 full-time bonus episodes a month on there. So if you're a Patreon subscriber with us on the highest level, which is $15, you get 2 full-length episodes a month and 24 mini bonus episodes a month. So I don't think anybody is doing as much content as what we do on Patreon.
I don't know how you fit all that time in.
What we just did, 1,009 or something.
Yeah, the minis that we started doing those a couple of years ago, and we just finished. I did 1,006 of those already out. So if you join Patreon today, if at our $15 level, you get 1,006 mini episodes, and we've done something like 60 full-length bonus episodes. That's a lot of content.
We just like to talk,
Apparently.
basically.
Well, you're in the right job to do it.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
We're on episode. This will be episode 43, I think, plus bonus episodes. So we've got some way to catch up with you guys. Although we are fairly new. We're fairly new to it.
Yeah, and it'll be there before you know it.
Yeah, we did that last month.
Thanks. We're just coming up to our anniversary.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah,
guys, that's great.
And unlike you, we've only ever been in the same place once, and that was at Cannock Chase, weirdly. So you were talking about Pigman on one of your episodes at Cannock Chase, and that's where me and Ash first met, and we'd done a paranormal investigation in the woods at Cannock Chase.
Oh my gosh, you are so brave.
So it was a bit wet, as is typical UK weather, but we didn't see the Pigman though, but it was some spooky stuff.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine.
So have you guys ever been on a paranormal investigation?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we were just on a paranormal investigation last Friday.
Okay, cool.
But we haven't been on a ton. That's not something. That's not something we typically do. It's not our cup of tea. We don't have the experience, but we did investigate the St. Augustine Lighthouse last Friday night because we had a live event out there, and that was part of it. And we've been to a couple of others, and back in years ago, for me, back 17, 18 years ago, I used to go on a few every couple of weeks. I would go on some because I was part of an investigation group in my previous life, basically pre-Tracy. But it's never been something that, people don't understand if they've never been on an investigation. Everybody watches these television shows and they think everything is, it's nothing but nonstop action. You can go to a place and spend 6, 7, 8 hours and get absolutely nothing.
I've done that.
That's just, you have to have a lot of patience because for most part, it's extremely boring. If you're going in looking for action, it's going to be boring. If you're a true paranormal investigator and you understand it, you're excited just for being there and the hope that you catch something. But not everybody looks at it that way. And I'm one of those people. I want more excitement. I'd rather go on a ghost tour of a house or of a city than to go on an investigation myself.
Cool.
Do you have a favorite paranormal case, like a famous one, or maybe one you've had on the show that you think, if anyone asked you to sort of talk about one case, what would it be?
Man, it's tough to narrow down. I've always been fascinated by the Bell Witch story. That's always been my favorite paranormal story. But I also, Amityville, of course, because you get the whole intrigue of the DeFeo murders before that. Did this really happen? Was it a hoax? You got all that in it. So that one's always been kind of fascinating. But as far as overseas, I've always said if I could go anywhere and just check a place out, it would be the Tower of London, just because of everything that's went on there.
It's an amazing place.
Huh?
Do you have a certain story or?
No, not really.
She doesn't remember any of them. Once we turn the microphone off, it's done. And honestly, to a certain extent, because we do so much, I'm kind of the same way. It's like studying for a test. I will cram 25 hours of research in on whatever episode. And once I start next week's, if you ask me about last week's episode, I'll be able to vaguely tell you, but I won't remember any specifics because I've moved on to something else. Like you were talking about the Pigman story. I remember it. I remember doing it. But I remember very few details. I think that might even been a Hillbilly Dead Time story when I'm not sure. I think
it was, yeah.
I think it was. But, I remember very little about it. But but that's the way it is. It's just, you can, I'm 53 years old. I can only retain so much up in this head. So I gotta have memory dumps almost every single week.
So what's your take on the UFO subject? What do you think UFOs are?
I don't know. It's an ongoing joke, which that I'm not big on UFOs. We've done probably on the main show 4 or 5 UFO stories. Rendlesham Forest obviously being one of them. We had our friends on from Don't Break the Oath podcast back then, which then went to Realm of the Supernatural, and now it's Bizarre Tales. So they keep changing names on me, but we had them on to talk about it because they were from Great Britain. And, I believe they're from another planet. I don't think they're interdimensional. I think they're from somewhere else in the universe. But I've just never had a huge fascination with it, which is why when we started UF Only, that's why they're short episodes. That's why they're only 8 to 10 minute episodes, because it can't keep my interest longer than that. And that's why at the beginning we make a joke about they probably only last 2 weeks or something, because everybody knows I do not have a big fascination with UFOs or cryptids for that matter. So we don't sneak a whole lot of cryptids in there either.
I like the episode length, because my drive to work is about 10 minutes. So your shorter form episodes are like perfect to stick on. Just listen to it, get to work, and when I come on, I listen to the next episode. So I do like the shorter form ones as well, especially like UFO ones, which is my sort of main interest. You covered, so like say, covered a couple of British ones there as well, which is good to listen to.
It's funny because we've only done, I think we just finished episode 8, came out yesterday. And for the first 4 or 5 weeks, there really wasn't a whole lot of, information coming from our feedback, I should say, from our listeners. But then all of a sudden on iTunes, we got 3 straight reviews last week, and every one of them mentioned the UF Only episodes. So we went 7 weeks with nothing and 3 reviews in a row that all mentioned them. And I think that people who aren't interested in UFOs are still liking those episodes, because that's what they're saying. Hey, I don't have an interest, but I like these. And I think it's because they're just short and to the point.
Definitely, because Ash has got the UK's largest database of sightings. He's collated that information. So he's our resident UFO expert.
Cool.
And you mentioned Rendlesham Forest. That was his go-to passion.
Yeah, like I say, so it's like one of them stories. That's a story has been there from for me growing up, and like I say, it's just one of them cases which is just captivated. Even if you're not interested in like UFOs that much, that case is still one that you'll know about, because all the different stories that have come from it, like before and afterwards. And again, when you mentioned before about portals and stuff, there's a lot of links between UFOs and other aspects of paranormal. Is that something that you've found when you've been doing your research? Do you think there's a link between UFOs and other areas of paranormal, like hauntings, spirits, that sort of thing?
I think the only thing that I've had is there's been some connections between, and this will get me in trouble with some people for saying it, but some Bigfoot sightings and UFO sightings some people think they go hand in hand. And I know I was talking to John E.L. Tenney, which some of you may be familiar with. He's a paranormal investigator, but he says that he's interviewed a lot of people that had Bigfoot sightings. And there's a lot of times that they've seen a bright flash of light, or they've heard almost like a sonic boom around the same time, and they don't even notice it until you're questioning them. And then when you ask, they're like, yeah, you know what? I think I did see this. So that was his way of saying he thinks there may be a connection to Bigfoot being an interdimensional being or being an alien. But I made the mistake of asking Steve Coles, who is what is he? The Squatch, what is it? I got it up at the Squatch detective. And you would have thought I killed his dog when I said something about Bigfoot being possibly alien, because he went on to give me this big lecture, and it was, let me tell you. Then I thought, man, I'm in trouble here. We were at a paranormal convention, and I actually brought him on the show and reminded him of that, because I just thought it was so funny. But that's the only, I don't think as far as UFOs, I don't think there's any connection really to anything else. I think it's its own thing. I think it's fascinating to think that Bigfoot or cryptids could be somewhat involved, but I personally don't think that's the case.
So what do you think of places like Skinwalker Ranch, Stardust Ranch, where they have all these weird, unusual things happening, like beings, lights in the sky, some case cryptids, and just other weird, just paranormal things going on? Like they have a whole range of things. Like you watch like Skinwalker shows and stuff. You've done an episode on that on your podcast.
Yeah, we've actually covered some of the big places. I know we've done Bennington Triangle, we've done Skinwalker Ranch, we did what's the other? Not the Bennington. There's another place up there in Massachusetts. Another one of those triangles, Michigan Triangle. There's all these different places that where, like you said, there are a bunch, and it's that set of woods. Matter of fact, it might have been where the pigman. There's a set of woods out in Great Britain that all this weird stuff happens. I don't know why some places just have that cornucopia of everything paranormal, but it is really cool to think about.
Do you think ley lines may have something to do with it?
I'm sure ley lines probably have a lot, because on every one of those situations, ley lines get brought up. Quartz is another one that gets brought up. I know there's a lot that goes on, right? We're about an hour away from Somerset, Kentucky. And Somerset is one of the places in the world that has the largest amount of natural quartz. It also has ley lines. It also sits on some big bodies of water. And they have a ton of stuff go on there. If you've ever seen the television documentary Hellier, they actually I can't remember if it's Hellier 1 or Hellier 2, but they go to Somerset and they talk to a gentleman who runs a paranormal museum there. We've actually been to that museum. Like I said, that's only about an hour from us. So it's pretty cool that they've got that, and limestone also built up down there. They've got literally everything in one spot that's supposed to bring in the paranormal. So that would explain why they have so much down there.
It's interesting you say Somerset. Somerset in the UK also has a lot of ley lines. We have Stonehenge round that way. So strange that it's a similar name and similar.
Well, I think they even brought that up in Hellier. They brought up the fact that because I think they even started looking up the name Somerset about as what it actually meant. So yeah, I think they actually made that comparison on that documentary of Somerset in Great Britain.
I think there's a third series of Hellier coming soon. You keep on touch with Greg Newkirk's social media, so I'm looking forward to that one. Do you have on the topic of sort of documentaries and TV shows? Do you have any ones that you recommend or don't recommend?
Well, as much as I hate to recommend it, I thought Demon House by Zach Bagans was actually pretty good. I'm not a Zach Bagans fan, as anybody who's ever listened to our show can tell you. But I thought the episode that the documentary on Demon House was actually pretty good. It was entertaining, and I like that one. So that's one. I used to just love all the old documentaries that would come out. There's a man, I can't think of the name of it. I can't think of the name of that or the gentleman. There was a British guy from like the early 90s that did a lot of documentaries, was the host of a lot of documentaries. And I love those shows.
There was one called Arthur C. Clarke, World of Strange Mysteries.
That's exactly what it was.
That's what got me into all the paranormal stuff when I was little. I won't say how old I am, but yeah, when I was little. And that was my first taste of Poltergeists, was on that program.
I think there's something about a British voice narrating about the supernatural, the paranormal, that just, it's fitting. I guess because Great Britain has, so much history that, we talk about stuff over here and, well, this house is 190 years old. And then you look over at, like ancient Ram Inn that was built in the 1300s or something. You're like,
I'm going there next month.
Oh, man.
Next month. Yeah.
Oh, man.
We got where I live just outside Oxford, and I went to Oxford Castle on a paranormal investigation, and there's been like a site there for over 1,000 years. So the history, and like you say, the Ram Inn goes back to 13th century, and that has ley lines underneath. They cross underneath. We went up to Cannock Chase, where and also Rendlesham, where there's like 900 years worth of history that we've talked about, and weird things happening over that time. But yeah, I do listen to the American podcasts and the American documentaries, and you guys talk about 200-year-old houses, 300-year-old houses. My nan had a 200-year-old house, and that was quite a young house.
It's like my house is over 100 years old, but I'm sat in now.
Oh my gosh.
That's like normal for this.
Mine's 2 years.
Amateurs over here.
So what are they doing at the ancient Ram Inn now? Because I know the owner, the gentleman passed away a couple of years ago, within the last couple of years.
That's right.
So is his daughter still running stuff up there, or did they sell it?
Yeah, no, so she still runs it, and certain groups will hire it out for the night and put on paranormal investigations. I'm part of a paranormal team in where I live, just outside Oxford. And we're hiring it for the night, so there's just 7 of us going up there to have free reign of the house for the whole night to see what we can find.
That's so cool.
See, it's like that fascinates me. I would absolutely love that. Would be on my bucket list of places to go. And it's like, for me, it's like, it's all the way across the pond. I mean, that would be an expensive trip. And then, but like we're like an hour away from Waverly Hills. And it's like for other people, it's like, oh my God, Waverly Hills. And it's like to us, we could just go there anytime we want to. And it's all about perspective,
Yeah, I can get most places in the UK in just over an hour. Although it would take me about 5 hours to get to Ash, I think. Because Ash lives the other end of the country to me. But the Ram Inn, I've been there before on an organised hunt, and I had a Ouija board. We were doing a Ouija board, and it just smashed up from underneath and just flew into the air. Absolutely crazy. And I know that you've talked about Ouija boards before, and I know Jerry, you've had some experiences with a Ouija board that you don't tell what happened. And I said to Ash, I would ask you the question: would you tell us what happened when you were younger when you did a Ouija board?
I will. I've never told this to anybody, but it is in my
podcast.
It is in my book, though. So because of the fact that I have put it out and the book's been out for it'll be a year next month. That's hard to believe. I've been saying that a year. That book's been out for a year. So anyways, I put it in the book. And so I'll tell you the story. This is a semi-long, but what the hell, we got all night, right? We're going to go back. It's New Year's Eve. I'm with a young lady that I had been dating for a short period of time, a couple of months. We were going to a party, New Year's Eve party. At the time, I didn't drink. Well, I still don't, but I didn't drink or anything like that. So I was really uptight in situations where there was drinking and drugs. It wasn't my cup of tea, and I didn't like to be around it. So we're going to a New Year's Eve party. We're in high school. I'm 17 years old at the time. So you know what goes on at these things. And so I already knew I'm not going to enjoy myself. Well, on the way there, my girlfriend says, hey, let's stop at Toys R Us and pick up a Ouija board. And I had no experiences at this time. But as we discussed, I was a big fan of The Exorcist, and we know how that turned out. And I had talked to a priest at my school and my church about exorcisms and all that stuff in the past, and talked about Ouija boards. And he said, stay the hell away from them, basically. That was my opinion of Ouija boards. So we stop and we get this game, and I voiced my displeasure, but my girlfriend at the time was hot and I wasn't. So you learn to just put up with stuff that I didn't exactly have the morals that I had today to where I would just stand my ground no matter what. So I was just happy to be there. We get the game. We go to this party. A little later, they're in the back. It's her, a couple of people. They're playing the game. I'm not having any part of it. You do you, and I'll be in the other room. So I'm in the other room with some friends. And I got a friend of mine named Andy Caudell that was there. And Andy was a gifted musician. He's playing the piano, even though he had never played before that night. He's just one of those guys that could just, hey, let me figure this out. And somehow or another, it gets mentioned that there's a Ouija board. And as soon as he heard that, he said, I'm out. I'm not going to have anything to do with the Ouija board. I don't like them. Don't know why. I've never found out his story, but he got up and left. And then we eventually leave. We packed the Ouija board up and everything, and we're leaving. I'm already not in a good mood, not really because of that, because she had been drinking, and it just, like I said, it just, now my morals all of a sudden were coming forward a little more. And I just had an issue. We're leaving. I'm taking her home, short drive to her house, and then even a shorter drive from her house to my house. We all lived basically pretty close. We go, I drop her off at the house. We don't talk a whole lot. I'm kind of upset. She knows I'm upset. She don't really care, but we just don't talk. I drop her off. I leave. I'm literally 2 minutes from a Kmart parking lot from her house. And as I pull out of her driveway and start going, I can hear something almost like a scratching sound in the back. And I think that I have ran over a branch or something and it's stuck under my car. And that's what I'm hearing is the branch. I'd done that before, which is the only reason I knew what it sounded like. So I drive a little bit, still doing it. So I pull off in this parking lot. Like I said, it's literally right up the road. And I get out, I look underneath my car, nothing. So I get back in the car and I start hearing scratching again. I hadn't even went anywhere yet. So I know it's not the car riding along scratching something on the asphalt. I hear it some more and I look back and there's that box, that Ouija board box. And I open the box up and I'm going to start off before I even get into the meat and potatoes of this to say this story sounds completely ludicrous. And I had never, my mom was the only person I told this story to. I told it to her that night because I knew she's the only one I could tell that story to, because nobody was going to believe this. And it was so unbelievable that it took from me being 17 years old to 52 years old before I ever told anybody. Tracy had asked, I'd never told her the story. My dad, sisters, nobody knew the story. That's how unbelievable it is, because I knew that people would hear this and they would say, that's BS. So I think anything else you say is probably BS. So I purposely did not tell this story. So that's why I held on so long. Anyways, long story short, as Tracy knocks over the table.
Sorry.
Long story short, I hear this scratch and I look back, there's the box. I get out, it's a 4-door car. I open the back seat door. I lift the lid off of this Ouija board and the planchette is sitting there on top of the board and it spells out, without me touching it, it spells out my first name. I was completely freaked out and I put the lid back on and I went over to the dumpster that was there at the Kmart and I threw it away. And I drove home. And like I said, it's literally 3-4 minutes up the road to my house. I get home and my mom, when I walk in, she's waiting up for me. She knows something had happened. We had that kind of connection, but she didn't know what. And I told her that story. And the next morning, I got back in my car to go somewhere. I was actually going to go back over to my girlfriend's house and try to patch whatever damage I'd done up the night before. And that Ouija board and the box was back in my car.
Yeah.
So I ended up burying it in there's some woods right behind our house. I buried it in the woods. And as far as I know, that's where it's still at today. And that was, we're talking about 1986. So now my dad still lives in that house, by the way.
Wow.
I think you should go dig it back up. See
What?
if it's there. Go see if it's still there.
Well, we were over there for, I think, Father's Day, which was in June. And my kids, they've all read the book. And so they all know that it's back there. And we actually kind of went back, and it's all grown up back there now and everything. And I could tell you maybe about the general area where it's at, but I don't think we'd ever be able to find it. So, I mean,
It's
you're
probably
talking
a good thing.
40 years ago. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the Ouija board story.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't like to have anything to do with them. Now, I do have hanging up behind me an Ozzy Osbourne Ouija board, but it's still in the box, still in the plastic. It was a gift from a listener, and it's worth about $250 on eBay.
Wow.
And I just put it up on the wall, but it's never been opened. So I'm okay with Ouija boards if they've never been opened, so I don't have a fear of not going near a box or something. I'll pick them up and all that stuff, but I don't want to have anything to do with,
No, fair enough. I had a Ouija board for a while, and I wasn't allowed it in the house for understandable. So it was just out in the back garden until such time that I sold it on eBay. So, but yeah, the group I belong to, the paranormal group, we don't use them at all. I belonged to one previously, a different paranormal group, and that was part of our investigations. We would use one, but I never really found any sort of movement or anything like that from them. So I didn't really have any positive or negative experience. But that story is, I don't think I would touch one ever again after that. For it to appear, but it's like some kind of weird pet cemetery type thing.
Right.
So, thank you for coming on the show today. Could you let everybody know where they can hear you, where we can find your podcast, and what other things you're up to at the moment?
Well, the podcast can be heard anywhere you listen to you guys. I'm sure we're on every major platform. The best way to keep up with anything we're doing is hillbillyhorrorstories.com. That's got all of our live events that we do. That's got any kind of that you can listen to the podcast on there if you'd like, and it just gives you an in general idea. We've got a cruise that we're doing, a paranormal cruise in September of next year, and right now we've had over 200 people sign up. That's and it's going to the Bahamas. It's going to have some other podcasters on there. We're going to do a live show on there, as well as just having some fun hanging out with each other. So, but that's the basics of it. We just have fun and like meeting new people, and there you go.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it, and putting up with the fact that we've got to have a late recording, and I know it's probably around about dinner time for you guys.
Yeah, we're getting ready to record our episode. We haven't done that yet, so we're going to do that right afterwards.
We won't hold you up too much longer. But yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
And look forward to listening to you over the coming weeks and years.
Well, thank you. It's so nice to meet you guys, and good luck with everything you guys are doing. You're going to do great.
Yeah, good luck on your 1 year anniversary that's coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah. So we have to do something special, Ash. I don't know what we'll do.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Pursuit of the Paranormal with Ash and Greg.